There's still some five stars out there for Mick Cronin to grab, but are his eyes looking elsewhere in next year's recruiting class?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free, whether it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go check it out. What we're talking about today, UCLA recruiting in football, men's basketball, baseball, and some coaching updates. All that and more here on today's episode of Locked On UCLA. Right now, we're diving into a little bit of UCLA basketball recruiting. Still more to be going out there for the Bruins as they're trying to get some feelers, trying to get out and make some noise, and maybe get a high school pledge earlier than 2 months before the season in a year in advance. We'll see how that happens for Mick Cronin, because lately the Bruins have done their work, made their mark in the transfer portal. Donovan Dent. Last year's 6 incoming transfers. The year before, that was the international class. The year prior, they had Amari Bailey and Adem Bona, who had a big impact on the team that won the Pac-12. So varying degrees of success with very different strategies for Mick Cronin. But now that NIL has been an opportunity, revenue sharing, the transfer portal has been a significant part of Mick Cronin's strategy now. How much can they go after guys? So what I'm focusing on right now, Jason Crowe Jr., is somebody who UCLA's been in on. You're like, okay, where's Jason Crowe fit in? A guy locally in SoCal. Is this somebody that UCLA should go after and could actually absolutely get? Well, 5-star talent, UCLA hasn't exactly hit on that in recent years, other than maybe Adem Bona, who was a late 5-star add and a late 5-star ranked player in his class, 4 to 5-star, and that was a little tougher to rate those international guys. Now, in terms of domestic talent for the Bruins to go after, Crowe's a guy that, yes, he's somebody who has been looking after Kentucky. I've been seeing what Joe Tipton's put out there, where it looked like Jason Crowe was maybe going to go to Kentucky. Next thing you know, he's looking more as if he might go to Missouri. But still, this is a guy who Jason Crowe, with Joe Tipton, guy who works for Rivals and On 3, posted talking about, oh, this guy doesn't have any final list. He's just, let's get to it. And I'm not entirely sure that UCLA is near the top of the non-existent list, but Kentucky, who is expected to be a favorite, is maybe not even in the running to be in the top 3 that doesn't exist right now for Jason Crowe Jr. This is somebody who, you're looking at Missouri, maybe could be that type of guy that, Eric Musselman could bring, just like how Andy Enfield brought certain talented guys to USC when he was the head coach. Maybe that could be an Isaiah Collier situation part 2, where they got a top-ranked recruit to USC. But right now, UCLA, maybe if Cronin really wanted somebody like Jason Crowe Jr., I think at this moment, with the cachet, the ability to go get somebody in the transfer portal and the Bruins to shell out the NIL opportunity for Donovan Dent, you would think, okay, maybe Crowe Jr. could be somebody that could look at UCLA's way. Not exactly. The ideal fit for UCLA could be Anthony Felesi, a state of Utah recruit, one of the best recruits in the state of Utah. The problem is for Felesi, this is somebody who is maybe looking at staying in state. That could be BYU. That could be maybe he wants to go and look at like a Louisville or California or anywhere at other spots. UCLA does have a good shot. This is a Bruin opportunity where not exactly a 5-star, but rated as a 4-star, depending on what rankings you use with 24/7 Sports. You got Felesi, who could be the top-ranked or second-best player in the state of Utah, 6'5", small forward. And where did UCLA miss the last couple of years? Andre Stojakovic, right? That 6'6" type of guy, where they got Jamar Brown in the transfer portal this year, but they want somebody who could hopefully be around for 1 to 2 years. And from taking in other content like Sleepers Media, who does a great job covering college basketball, talking about his defensive intangibles and what he wants to do defensively, that could be somebody who Mick Cronin looks at more than the big-name 5-star that's not going to be there for more than a year potentially, whether they're good or bad. They won't be there for more than a year. Felesi could be somebody who the Bruins go after, like, okay, playing relatively close to home, we'll give you an opportunity. And you still have to go with the defense first mandate that Mick Cronin throws out there. So Felesi, who's been on the Bruins' minds for a little bit longer than most in the class of 26, hopefully could fit that mold of a player that UCLA's been hoping to get. That type of 6'6", 6'4" type player. You saw Kobe Johnson have a big impact defensively this last year. They're trying to get somebody like that maybe in a year or two, right? Jalen Clark, when UCLA was good, that type of body build. Felesi, could he fit that same type of player? I'm not exactly sure if that would be the case, but it is certainly somebody who UCLA is looking after, and maybe he could go elsewhere. But that is one of the higher guys on UCLA's list, if that's even to become a reality. All right. The only class of 25 guy UCLA got was Markel Alston from New York, who was a very late add. And that comes on the heels of two recruits in the class of 24 who didn't get many, if not any, opportunities, right? With Eric Freeney. And then you had, the building of Trent Perry at the late add in last year's class. So you're wondering, is this something where Cronin's going to put it together in this package to get somebody like this? What's UCLA looking at when it comes to revenue sharing? Are they going to give it mostly to football and give Deshaun Foster the love? Or will Mick Cronin get some of that and UCLA can go recruit? Those are questions Mick Cronin's probably trying to answer right now. Is he going to shove it out to 5 stars that are in your own backyard like Jason Crowe Jr.? Doesn't look like it, as a guy who's most likely headed to Missouri, maybe, according to a Joe Tipton or whoever you follow. He's not necessarily looking at UCLA, but there's still an opportunity with a couple of weeks to go before he announces mid to late July for Crowe Jr. to maybe make an impact if they really wanted to have some say, or go after Felesi, who UCLA thinks, all right, top 50 guy, top 45 guy, at a position they just have not gotten. For UCLA, speaking of positions, we're shifting back now to football to wrap up segment number 1. UCLA, there's a couple of guys. One that is crystal balled and predicted to go to UCLA, and another one was in their own backyard, a highly coveted prospect that ended up going elsewhere. You have Brian Bonner, who was in Valencia for Deshaun Foster, running back, that the Bruins have been like, all right, this is somebody who is pretty much in our own backyard. We'd love to get a 4-star running back. Instead, the SoCal kid goes to Washington after UCLA's been able to pluck a couple of guys from the state of Washington, win some recruiting battles against the Huskies and Jed Fish, and bring them to UCLA. Bonner is one of those guys that ends up going to Washington to play for Jed Fish. He just announced his commitment. I know the Locked On Huskies show, they were super excited about Bonner going to Washington just about a day ago with his commitment after it was like, oh, there's a late switching in the prediction. And then next thing you know, he's heading his way, committing and announcing that he's going to go play for Washington. One thing to look out for the Bruins, if they have a spectacular end of the regular season, if they got a lot of things building for the Bruins, maybe some of these SoCal kids might switch their pledges and their commits to come back to UCLA, all right? Could the Bruins, when it heads into transfer portal season, when it heads into the early signing day and all these different crazy recruiting windows that seemingly are trying to change, might not, whatever it looks like, will UCLA get some of those local guys to change their mind and come to UCLA instead of those higher ranked guys flipping from UCLA like we saw in the winter of 2024? Could they start coming to UCLA in 2025? Could Bonner be one of those guys? I'm not sure. This is still a whole lot of season to play, a lot of football to prepare for in the 2025 season. But UCLA, with this recruiting class in 2026, with what they've built, it's all going to depend on how they do in 2025. You can earn and gain a lot more commits and talented players just from having a solid season and riding the momentum into year 3 for Deshaun Foster. Or if the Nico, I'm not sure if it's a project, but the Nico experiment, the Nico opportunity, if the UCLA as a whole, with what they've brought in the portal and the staff overhaul, fails in year 2 for Deshaun Foster, you might see something similar. But the reason why to be excited is that there's a Marcus Almada. I've talked about him in the last Locked On UCLA show. He is predicted, seen it from 24/7 Sports. There's other models that would predict him, a Massachusetts recruit in the D-line, to come to UCLA. Now, there are other potential commits to UCLA, including one of his high school teammates. But can UCLA get Almada first, who's announced that on July 10th, he will be announcing his commitment. And if UCLA gets one, it might be like that state of Florida run UCLA had in June. could the Bruins get a couple of more in the state of Massachusetts to fortify the trenches on the defensive line? But first, it would be Almada, who could be one step, and then the UCLA Bruins could continue to build, working on the D-line, and that would be a huge get for Deshaun Foster. Maybe not one, but two high school teammates from all the way across the country for the second time in this offseason. And I think that would be a huge win. We'll talk about that. Of course, seeing a SoCal kid go thousands of miles away or going further up the coast elsewhere to play, that does sting a little bit, but you wish them the best of the opportunities. And I think Bonner would be stuck in a bit of a crowded running back room. Almada, though, and the D-line recruits that could come to UCLA, big time opportunity for the Bruins if they're ready to play within 1 to 2 years. And then Mick Cronin, got to figure it out. We'll see what happens. Is it this guy? Is it that guy? We'll find out for UCLA as the recruiting battles continue to heat up for both football and basketball in years to come. For baseball now, John Savage, what's his situation like? No real update I've seen on Jackie Robinson Stadium, but there was one on Coach Savage, and they had some transfer news. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And if you're speaking of and thinking of FanDuel, track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh. There's new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. No, it's not, oh, the dog days of summer. No, it is, wait a minute, let's get after and do it with FanDuel. Maybe you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning. FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Cruising on here in Locked On UCLA, let's update you about some key situations on the baseball diamond for UCLA. All right, the Bruins have made some moves in the transfer portal to improve the 2026 roster, a team that is coming off a College World Series appearance 12 years after they won the program's first ever national championship. Uncertainty about Jackie Robinson Stadium, where the Bruins will play next year, considering that lease was extended through this season and not really a full solution into next year, where the Bruins might be the traveling show playing home games on the road. There's still no official word I've seen publicly on what the Bruins will do for the baseball team right now. All right. And it took till January of 2025, I believe, before the Bruins could even realize and utilize their own home for practice, for games, and prepare with their home schedule. Now, heading into 2026, the big question mark into this summer, when the academic calendar year, when we went to the new fiscal year, was what does the contract situation look like for John Savage, the UCLA head man who got a big contract extension after winning the national championship, Bruins' first and only championship in baseball. You thought, okay, UCLA with 2 tournament-less years, back-to-back years missing the tournament, you're heading into a new chapter, you're heading into the Big Ten. What does that look like? A conference that, quite frankly, UCLA should dominate and they should win. All right? Well, year one, you could argue, were they fully at the top with their pitching with a young team that was maybe a year away? Well, they won the Big Ten regular season. They tied with Oregon. They were in the Big Ten tournament championship game, a game that was played in Omaha, far away from UCLA. And then they still made it back to Omaha a few weeks later and played in the College World Series, winning an opening game and competing despite the rough situation with the rain delay hurting them, even though they're in the winner's bracket in that College World Series. So a lot with pretty much the majority of the team coming back. John Savage, as reported by the Daily Bruin, the UCLA student newspaper, just a few days ago, right, prior to the 4th of July, where, all right, maybe it's snuck in. Maybe you already had your holiday plans. You're like, all right, where am I going to go watch fireworks? Maybe you're getting the barbecue ready. Maybe you're just jumping and enjoying, just the summer breeze, whatever it might be. UCLA has finally decided to update us. And with the Daily Bruin, this is what they said. John Savage has a 3-year contract extension. All right. And while the update doesn't exactly give specifics, you might have seen some in various sources, but using the Daily Bruin hasn't exactly fully put the contract extension. I haven't seen anything from many other places about this, but so far John Savage is in place. It made a lot of sense. UCLA announced the hiring of an assistant. They announced a new transfer, mostly as a commit. And you're like, wait, where's John Savage? Well, it went through, all right, this is most likely what's going to happen. John Savage was expected to come back. And lo and behold, he's coming back for another 3 seasons. I wonder what it looks like. But if UCLA is going all forward in 2026, they're going to need a lot more pitching, a lot more development in the pitching, and most importantly, or just as importantly, some place to practice and play the games. Because it may or may not be Jackie Robinson, but that's not the point of this segment. UCLA will have John Savage for another 3 seasons through 2028. So next year is supposed to be the dream year. Right now, looking at the transfer portal, UCLA hasn't lost a lot of talent like they have in years past, namely on the pitcher's mound. This year, I'm not sure if there's a lot to get from UCLA's staff, but the Bruins do need to add. What the Bruins did add, though, what I saw in the transfer portal, was announced Will Gasparino, a former Texas Longhorn. So started his career a little bit in the SEC, a little bit in the Big 12, who a 6'6" kid played his high school ball at Harvard-Westlake. Let me tell you, Harvard-Westlake, a really good SoCal high school baseball program. So a local kid coming back home, and this will be, his 3rd different conference? Trying to keep all track of who's played in which conference and where is sometimes a little mind-boggling. It's a little interesting, but I'm pretty sure if I got the years right, he's played in the Big 12, he's played in the SEC, and he'll come home to Los Angeles and play at UCLA. For Gasparino, a guy who his career numbers are as follows at Texas: a .247 hitter, has hit 25 home runs, has about 55 extra base hits, and almost 100 RBIs. Now, if you put that together, that's over the course of 117 games with some major pop, with some ability to hit the gaps, and the ability to get on base with 40 walks, but a lot of strikeouts. A lot of strikeouts, which he did cut down from his freshman to sophomore year. His power numbers, his RBI numbers went up despite playing less games. So one less game, few less games started at Texas this last year. His walks more than doubled. His strikeout numbers down 13. And if you're looking at 3 less games, I would say that's a significantly less strikeout percentage. His on-base percentage went up. This is Gasparino. And all the numbers mostly went up despite slightly less playing time for Texas, a team that lost earlier in the NCAA tournament. If they had won, UCLA would have been on the road in Austin, but instead they played UTSA in the Super Regionals. So Gasparino coming home, and there's a lot to like, a lot of pop in the bat. And if UCLA can cut down on those strikeout numbers, get that on base percentage up, continue with the power, then UCLA is going to have a very strong lineup for an outfielder coming to UCLA. All right. Now, the Bruins aren't meant to lose a lot. They have Rock Chalowski as the mainstay on the UCLA infield that is supposed to lead them back to Omaha and compete for a national championship. The big thing is John Savage, newly extended. Can he go after more transfers? This is something newer to his recruiting strategy. He hasn't fully gone out there and made big statements and gotten big-time players in the transfer portal. We've seen the SEC, namely LSU, who's just won their 2nd national championship in 3 seasons in a run, a string of SEC dominance in the sport of college baseball, where they've plucked UCLA players off the roster. We've seen some players leave, some of which early to the MLB draft prior to coming to UCLA, or a lot of which going to make money at other places, which are going to share their money, or at the time, NIL opportunities, if you will, and give them a chance to make money while playing college ball and play with thousands, tens of thousands of fans. While UCLA is sitting there without a home stadium potentially in 2026. But that's what made this team special, and John Savage's coaching job in 2025 all the more special. You bring the team together with no field, with no practice opportunities, practicing at a JUCO at 2 to 3 local high schools until you're supposed to be ramping up to start your season, and then boom, oh yeah, you can actually play this year, but you're not going to necessarily have a home stadium next year when your team will be really good. And what was supposed to be the strides made next year was what the team did this year in a new conference, a lot more travel than most years, and the Bruins still hosted a regional, hosted a super, and won a game in the CWS. A big-time year for John Savage to cash out, and for him to cash in on this year's team that is largely made of underclassmen, they need to get pitching. They need to develop what they have on the staff, because those numbers on this UCLA staff, pitching-wise, they're not going to cut it if you want to win. In the Big Ten, UCLA should be dominating on the mound. I know UCLA might be able to hit a little bit better, but the pitching numbers, if you compare them to their national championship winning team for John Savage, who has had great arms come through, right? Garrett Cole. You've had Trevor Bauer, who was a part of the UCLA pitching staff way back when. This year, the staff's ERA was 4.5. All right? 4.5 for a team that was like, wait a minute. They gave up how many earned runs this year? 291. Predicated themselves with great defense, the ability to turn more than just the occasional double play, leading the country in double plays turns, and usually being able to outslug the opponents. Can't work, I think, for more than a few seasons. I know we saw UTSA do that in cases. Murray State, making it all the way to the College World Series, was able to do that. But to win a championship in a bigger ballpark like Omaha, in this newer stadium, where UCLA won a national championship, where the stadium was so much bigger, you can't just rely on crushing the ball out of the ballpark. You're going to need some pitching, and you're going to need a lot more development of it. Luckily, a good portion of the UCLA team at this moment is most likely coming back, barring some significant changes, and that's why you probably wouldn't have seen John Savage go elsewhere. Hopefully not too many changes to the staff, and mostly, will John Savage go after players and potential in the portal? If that's not the case, then we might see UCLA ceiling still be what it was this year, but a win or two short of the national championship. But this is a team that is going for it in 2026. Stadium, who knows? Who knows what those woes will be in 2026? For now, UCLA has got a talented player, Gasparino, coming from Texas. It's got some things to work on, but big, powerful, 6'6", coming from the SEC that could do some big-time damage in the Big Ten, all right? And hopefully UCLA to even better heights with a team that's already stacked and talented with the lineup as it is. But it's up to John Savage with that new contract to maybe start thinking out of the box with what he's done in recent years if he wants to win another national championship. He's built the culture, but getting 1 to 2 other guys to buy in from outside of LA, from outside this homegrown roster, might just be what it takes to put UCLA over the top. That's what the SEC's done. They've plucked all the players from UCLA. Can the Bruins do the same across the country with some very talented players out there and available? Hopefully the Bruins can do that. But until next time, we'll talk more UCLA recruiting. We'll have more updates. I'll have a show with Jacob Goins recorded pretty soon and all sorts of fun things. And of course, I'll have to roast Spencer for a terrible Big Ten power rankings. All that next on future Locked On UCLA episodes. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.